The FBI is conducting an investigation into one of the most popular corporate bankruptcy judges in America after he resigned in disgrace following a massive sex scandal that may have corrupted countless rulings. Now, we did a story on this. The reason this story is so important, and the reason I think the story we did last time got like 250,000 views because people are saying, this is really happening in America, really? So this man, Jones, had a sexual relationship with a woman named Elizabeth Freeman. As a matter of fact, they owned what I call a love shack together. They were paying for this love shack, a house together, and he never discloses that to anybody who appears in front of him. The people who appear in front of him are corporate America, who are trying to get away with making sure creditors don't get paid, that the CEOs don't lose any money, that they keep most of their money and the creditors just go to hell. Right?
Yeah, and Elizabeth Freeman, what her job was essentially was, hey, I'm going to go with my firm and we're going to recruit these businesses all over the country and tell them, come and file your bankruptcy case down here in Houston in front of Jones. And then after she did that with the law firm she was working with for several years, she then started her own firm. And she partners up with big-time law firms like Kirkland Ellis.
Biggest in the world.
Yeah, and says, Kirkland, you got to come down here to this, not just this jurisdiction, this guy.
Judge.
He became the busiest bankruptcy judge in the world because of all the cases she was bringing in. And of course, never disclosed that, yeah, okay, she's getting a kickback from the firms for bringing them here. He, of course, is just ruling for corporations with every slap of that gavel. And it's this massive corruption taking place in Texas, but extending throughout the entire country.
Wall Street Journal reports that the lawyers at Kirkland Ellis, the huge firm, would bring Freeman in. They know about the relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, they deny that they know, but there's people that said, well, hell yeah.
There's text messages and all kinds of fun
stuff. There's a lot of stuff
too.
that says, yes, we knew that he was having sex with Freeman and they owned the love shack together. And all he had to do is rubber stamp everything Kirkland Ellis asked him to do. And so but what's interesting to me, if this was any other Department of Justice, I'd be really encouraged because the Department of Justice really is doing a massive investigation. And it goes on. He had a sidekick, Marvin Isger. What was Marvin Isger's role? He had a panel. It was him and Marvin Isger, who's another bankruptcy judge, who was supposed to, they were supposed to handle all the complex cases that would come in front of them, which are the big corporate cases. And so this fellow named Van Deelen, he goes in front of him and he sees what's going on. And he says, you need to disclose this relationship that you're having sex with this woman who is up here arguing on behalf of the corporation to my detriment, right? Yeah. And all this starts to unfold. And tell me about the ramifications as you see it.
Well, right now, as you mentioned, you do have the FBI that is conducting an investigation here. But so far, Jones, he resigned maybe a year ago. But when he resigned, this was a small thing that only the people like the Van Deelen exposing this.
Right.
It was just the people in the court that kind of knew what had happened. He would still be on this bench today had he not been called out. But then ProPublica got a hold of this story.
Great job they did on it.
They're the best in the country. And they exposed this. The Wall Street Journal, to their credit, dug even deeper and found all this. Like I said, the text messages, we've got the internal communications where these firms are almost joking.
Partners in the Kirkland Ellis firm communicating about the backstory of this with the judge.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got just more evidence that I don't even know what else they're still investigating at this point.
It's leading to other people.
Yeah.
It's leading to other people in the system, other judges who might have known about it and kept their mouth shut. It might have been other clerks who knew about it but kept their mouth shut. That's a furtherance of the wrongdoing here. It's really almost a classic RICO case to me.
Yeah.
Because there's this whole chain of people that are involved.
What worries me is, like you said, this DOJ is terrible, and they are. So if they're the ones that do the case, I don't have hope. But if we were to get a prosecutor in Texas, I have even less hope because Texas is so corrupt as it is. I don't think they would even do it.
Yeah, we've been asked to get involved in a couple of cases involving. What I find most interesting about this, as we're looking into it for other reasons, we have a lot of reason to look into it, is because why would a corporation that is in, say, New York or California, why would they go to Texas to seek protection with this judge? Well, they go there because they know they've got it wired. Kirkland Ellis handles these massive cases. Every major case that was a complex case, according to what's reported, those cases ended up in front of him, or they ended up in front of this Marvin Isger, that's, I'm sure, also under investigation. But I don't think this ends well for people who did that, because when discovery takes place and you start asking questions, well, who did you talk to before you came down here to Texas to do this? What people did you talk to? Did you talk to people who knew Freeman? Did you talk to people at Kirkland Ellis? Who did you talk to before you made the decision to travel from Portland, Oregon down to Texas to bring a case like this?
Well, and we've seen big, like Johnson & Johnson, I think is a great example with the Texas two-step, because that's what it's called when you go to Texas and do this. Mm-hmm. But Johnson & Johnson went down to Texas to file their bankruptcy claim while they were trying to avoid, paying out victims from the lawsuits that had already been won. So Johnson & Johnson's a great example. You could have gone anywhere. Why'd you pick Texas? That underlying question, to me, is almost, why was he so corporate friendly?
Yeah.
He doesn't just do it because out of the goodness of his heart, I love corporations so much. There's a missing piece somewhere.
Well, he loved Freeman so much. This Marvin Isger apparently cooperated with Judge Jones in covering all this up, right? Do you know that part of the story?
I haven't seen all that.
Yeah, you had documents that were out there that they sealed. And they sealed them for more than a year, so nobody would know about it and they could delay this taking off. This case, to me, I think it's just started.
Yeah.
And I think even with this Department of Justice, they're going to have to do something that's substantial. I don't think you just say, well, this is a bad bit of history for the bankruptcy business, and we're just going to move on. What I find amazing is Judge Jones's lawyers are arguing that he had no duty to disclose. That's literally, he had no duty to disclose that he was having sex with this woman. Wasn't he paying her money too?
She got, he was directing all the fees towards her from all these law firms that she was bringing in, so she would get, percentages for doing nothing more than saying, hey, come on down to Judge Jones here. Yeah. That was, one of the things initially reported by ProPublica, was how she would get the kickbacks off of that.
Wow, where does this land?
Hopefully in prison. Yeah, that's where I would love to see it go.
We've never seen the Department of Justice throw white-collar criminals in prison, but maybe we will.